I've chosen the play Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare, and the scene is what's in a name. Firstly, I'm going to paraphrase or summarize the scene, and secondly, go through the prosody, such as the aspects of speech. Thirdly, the language and imagery scene, and second to last, theme and message, and lastly, the context, both in modern times and as it was common back then for tragedy, how Romeo and Juliet classifies as such. So the scene is about Romeo and Juliet confessing their love to each other. Firstly, Juliet is standing on the balcony, having a soliloquy where she openly talks about her feelings towards Romeo. But she's very conflicted and doesn't know what is right to do at this point. What she doesn't know is that Romeo is standing underneath the balcony listening to everything she's saying, but he doesn't know when to interrupt her. But at some point he chooses to break through her speech, and the scene becomes a dialogue between the two of them, where Romeo tries to convince her that their love is real. So one of the arguments he makes is that he will give up his name and household for them to be together. The fact that the scene is called What's in a Name is very important for this scene, because the whole point is that Romeo doesn't care about his name, and if that is what makes Juliet distance herself from him, it is very important for Romeo to convince Juliet that it's not a fact that plays a huge role for him. So that's kind of what the play is about. That Romeo will do everything in his power to make Juliet his fiancée. So the prosody and aspects of the speech is very typical for a William Shakespeare play. The main point is the iambic pentameter, which is made out of 10 syllables, where the first one is an unstressed and the second a stressed one, and that keeps going for all of the 10 syllables. An example would be in the third line, the first page, where Juliet says, "Or if thou wilt not be but sworn, my love." The effect is that it has a certain rhythm to it when you read it like that, which makes it very easy for the actors to remember, so they can quote the whole text without looking at it. This example is a blank verse because it's unrhymed. So, for the second part, the language and imagery, there's a lot of metaphors in the scene. One of the really important ones is line 11 to 12 on page 2. where Juliet says, "What's in a name? That which we call a rose, by any other word would smell as sweet." What she's saying is that the name is the only thing holding them apart from each other. And by such, the rose is defined as perfection, or rather Romeo. The only the only conflict is that Romeo has the opposite household of her, and it's almost impossible for her to see how they can be together. So Romeo, with again a metaphor, says on line 36 to 37 on page 2 that with love's light wings did I purge these walls, for stony limits cannot hold love out. The wings of love is what makes this a great quote, as well as there's no limit for his love. So he's basically saying that he will do everything he can to create their paradise where they can be together, even if he has to climb walls or go through stony limits. Yep. There's also used an aside where Romeo says to the audience, "Shall I hear more or shall I speak of this?" This kind of informs the audience that he's hearing what's going on, although Juliet isn't. So it just creates this suspense between the characters. Dramatic irony also plays a great role in this scene, because the audience knows everything that's going on, but the actors doesn't actually hear each other. There's also used a lot of senses, such as "My ears have yet not drunk 100 words, or thy tongue's uttering, yet I know the sound." This just plays on the human's mind, where you kind of get dragged into the story and can more easily imagine what's happening. It's a way of creating imagery. Okay, the theme and message. Yeah, basically one of them is the great chain of being. So Romeo and Juliet cannot be together because the great chain of being says so. There always has to be an order to the world, and you cannot break this. Although Romeo does everything he can to overcome this this law of the world, which has consequences for both of them in the end. Another theme is that love conquers and overcomes everything. at least in this scene. So Romeo will do everything in his power to conquer Juliet's heart. Another one is that it's very important to make peace between the two households. Alliances are much stronger than creating enemies. For the context, you can put this scene into perspective in the modern society, because love is still very much of importance to humankind, and everyone can basically see themselves in that place. Most people have tried loving someone before. It doesn't matter if it's family or friends or just someone you care about. Also, the fact that they want to befriend each other, even though it seems impossible, and that the two of them stand together stronger than if they were alone. Lastly, Romeo and Juliet is very much a typical tragedy, because in this scene, Romeo's curiosity has the better of him, and he tries to do everything in his power to have Juliet's heart, although the consequences and are very real. Yep, I think that's it.